How's that?
That works.
Better?
Yeah,
okay,
I can hear you now.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
Sorry about that. So this is so we're live across the internet right now. So hello and welcome to Bar Teams Live, where we learn about the who's who and how bar operations with some of the best consultants in the business. To join the conversation live, head to live.barteams.com. If you're not a member of the community, be sure to visit us at barteams.com to set up a profile and get access to all the docs, training, and support you could possibly need for your bar. Today we have some of the best in the business on the panel to discuss some hard tunes and a special guest to share all of their insights. We have Chris Schneider from the Bar Business Podcast, all from barteams.com, and all of this other stuff. If you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas, head to live.barteams.com and join the conversation. Now let's get started. So today we have Chris Schneider, and we're going to be talking about Big Ice. So the big controversy that I heard this week was there was a bar that was charging extra for large ice. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Well, I go a couple different ways. So as you know, I approach everything from the numbers end, right? Most of what I do is financial in nature. And it depends on where you are. So, and what I mean by that is a Tito's, what does a Tito's cost down the street from you in New York City? Like just a Tito's.
It's like a Tito's and soda is like $12 here, $10 here.
Okay, so a Tito's and soda where I live
$10 at a dive, and you have to mortgage if you're in Midtown.
Okay, so where I live, it's $6. And the thing is that Southern Indiana. I live around a bunch of rednecks, and $6 is you're pushing what people want to pay for a drink at $6. So a $1 cube of ice, when I'm charging $12, is not a huge, it's 18% or whatever, or not it. No, I'm sorry, it's 8% or whatever. Compared to $6 or $5, now you're talking about 20% of the price is just in this cube of ice. So I think there's generally speaking, I think charging for ice is stupid, but if you live in a market where prices are already way low in comparison, right? You're getting 50% less for your drink than say where you are. And you don't price that ice cube into the drink, you almost have to charge for it. Otherwise, the ice cube is going to eat the majority of your margin.
Okay, how much would you, all right, as a bar owner, how much would you be willing to pay for a piece of frozen water?
I don't know. And that's the thing, right? Because it's going to depend on, what kind of equipment you're using to make that piece of frozen water. I know a lot of, again, where I live, there's not a huge demand for giant ice. So most places are doing it out of silicone molds in their freezer rather than having an ice machine or something. So obviously what you can charge for a piece of ice is largely going to depend on what it costs you to make that piece of ice.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dig into that then, because like if you don't know how much your ice costs, like for instance, like there are a few bars in New York that have Klein belt machines, right? There's the refrigerator side ice makers that have the constantly streaming water in a frozen environment, and that's how you get crystal clear ice. And if you're not sure, like what I know about this is that the reason they do it is because you have constantly circulating water in a frozen environment. The minerals and weird stuff, air bubbles and stuff, they eventually escape, right? And so you're left with this crystal clear ice cube. There's no striations like you'll find in I don't know. If you want to know anything there is to know about ice, check out Camper English or alconomics.com. And he can tell you everything that there's to know. Go to Amazon and buy his book. But as far as like the landed cost for a wholesale cost in New York, it's around $1 for a piece of ice, right? And the process of getting that is they have to break down this big 300-pound piece of ice. And so so if you wanted to do it yourself, like you get a Klein belt machine, which is a couple grand, probably $4 or $5 grand, you'd have to find the space for it. And so like any savvy restaurant owner knows how to monetize the space and knows the cost of cost per square foot. And so that you have to consider that in the revenue model. And then you find out how many pieces it's going to take to you're going to have out of each cycle. And then you also have to have a fucking engine block hoist to get it out. So you've got additional labor, you've got additional liability, you've got staff using bandsaw. And so I would argue that it's probably cheaper to put that in. It's like cheaper to buy it wholesale because you don't have to deal with all the liability. You don't have to deal with like the actual hard costs of having the machines. And then also you don't have to deal with like the hassle of I don't know, paying people to cut ice and stuff for you. But you should have a pretty good idea of how much the actual piece of ice costs. But the nickel and diming shit of like putting charging an extra $1 if you want fancy ice is like kind of like a little fuck you to the consumer. It makes me sad a little bit because it's like I don't know. You're just saying to people like, I am doing this as a status symbol. I'm buying. It's not going to make the drink any better, really. I may maintain the drink a little bit longer, but I just don't. It just seems like it's like kind of a status symbol, and it's kind of like yucky. But I would, if I was going to do it, I would consider that a part of the premium experience of dining at your place, and that you should absorb the cost into the overall cost and then charge tax on it. I mean, basically distribute the cost between the lower cost items and the higher cost items, but it is a ingredient just like whiskey, gin, rum, tequila, or like a syrup or a garnish. Like you should understand the cost of it, incorporate it in the cost, know what your margin is, which, you know, just for generality's sake, like if you're running at a 12% beverage cost, like you're like TGI Fridays. If you're like 17%, 20%, then you're like Death and Company or like a very high-end bar. And so you need to charge accordingly and then charge on top of that based on like the current market conditions. Like for instance, like if you're, you know, for most cocktails at a place like Death and Company or some temple of mixology, then your price is actually going to be above your projected margin. So like you'd be like, I have to be below 15% in my pour cost, including the ice, including the garnish, including whatever else. And then on top of that, I can charge what the market will bear based on the confidence in the brand. So like, for instance, like Death & Co. or like any other very fine place, they can go above their margin and reduce their pour costs because the expectation of excellence is there and they deliver. So they may need to charge $17, $18 for a drink because they use fancy ice, but they can actually get away with $20, $21 because that's what the market will bear. And that's what people kind of expect to pay. So like, you know, in New York, we don't have $6 Tito's and sodas.
Right. Right. And see here, if you tried to charge, you might be able to get 8 at a really high end place, say in Indianapolis or Louisville or something like that. You might be able to get 12. But you hit that 15 number and people are going to just say that you're robbing them blind. And so that becomes the problem, right? When you live in a market,
$15, not 15%.
Right, $15. But when you live in a market where the market essentially, a 12% liquor cost is not going to happen. A 15% liquor cost is probably not going to happen. A lot of bars, you know, in the Midwest and the South, you're talking about around 20, 22%, because you can't charge that $15 for a drink. You charge $6. And there's
is there enough meat on the bone to make it make sense economically? I guess you just have to sell a lot more drinks, right? Is there less competition?
There can be less competition. It becomes a math problem, right? And one of the things that differentiates, say, where you are rents $25,000, where I am rents $2,500. So your math changes, right? The expenses that you have to cover out of your revenue are lower in a lot of cases. So you don't need that, which means then you can accept a higher liquor cost, keep the same margins on the bottom line, but you're selling things at a lot cheaper price. So a $1 thing of ice is significant in the cost of a drink. Now, the other thing too that I noticed when you were talking about getting these machines that make this crystal clear ice. Your market has a concept that crystal clear ice is important. I would largely say my market has a concept that big ice is cool. Doesn't care. No, you can literally use a silicone mold from Walmart and pop out a completely opaque cube of ice with lines running in it, it's still cool because there aren't that many people really outside of large cities that are doing the crystal clear ice because of the transportation costs and everything else with it, right? So,
okay,
yes,
ice nerds. Okay, ice nerds. Indiana is a blue ocean if you want to get in the ice business, because apparently you just show up there with ice that has no stuff in it, and it's going to blow everybody's mind. Awesome.
pretty much. In a lot of places it will, because and part of that though is that you can't charge enough for the drink to make the crystal clear ice that's crazy make sense. And the other thing too is here, I mean, not to say that we're a lower end market, but we largely are, and a lot of the Midwest and the South is the same way. People don't care as much necessarily. Now, in the cities, obviously, you get your cocktail drinkers that are, but in general, your rural bars, you got booze in a glass with ice. People are happy.
Okay, cool. Well, bless their hearts. I guess they don't have Yelp there either. If you're just joining us, all right. If you're just joining us, head to live.barteams.com to ask Chris or me a question. We are talking about some semi, pithy concepts that we get as bar consultants. So head to live.barteams.com and ask us any questions, and we will see you there. But all right, what's next? So speaking of costing, most of the clients that I come across have no idea how much money they make. What's the craziest thing you ever saw on a menu?
I've seen a lot of things. One of the things that always blows my mind when it comes to people not knowing what they make and not knowing their costs and all that is the concept of, well, the guy down the street charges $12 for his fried chicken, so I charge $12 for my fried chicken. Right? Yeah. I'm just using fried chicken as an example, but the idea that you do pricing by just benchmarking the market is ridiculous, because most of the time, how do you even know, especially fried chicken is nice because it's complex. You can do it 1,000 different ways. Is your fried chicken even cost the same to make as the other person's fried chicken?
Why is but why is that ridiculous though? Because if you have established what the market will bear, then if the other person is not charging enough, they're going to go out of business, right? But if the other person is charging enough and then you can beat them on cost with efficient ordering, inventory systems like preservation, stuff like that, then why shouldn't you match their price?
Well, you should, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't, but the number of people that just say, well, everybody in town charges X for a Tito's soda, right? So here it's $6. Everybody charges $6 for a Tito's soda. I'm going to charge $6 for a Tito's soda. Okay, cool. Tito's soda, you got a lime on there, maybe a lemon. Everybody has the same structured cost essentially for those. But you get into specialty cocktails, you get into food, you get into some of these things where there's a lot more variability in ingredients and what costs can be. And just picking a price based on what the guy down the street's doing without considering your own costs, without considering your inventory, without considering any of that, and just doing it because it's what everyone else does, to me is a scary proposition.
Huh. All right. So we got a question in the chat from Angel Fisher. Said, I've never heard of ice charges. Where are you? Chris is in Indiana. He's in BFE, Indiana.
Yeah.
As in you can't even see his neighbors. How cool is that? I mean, I'm in New York City and literally I can see 5 people dumping garbage on the sidewalk right now. Angel says that I recommend ice made clear molds if you have the freezer space. But there's a little problem with that, Angel. It doesn't work like that. So there's if you look at it's not going to be clear. You're going to see striations and kind of weird shit coming out. And the way you beat that. Okay, so let's talk about making ice at home. If you want to make ice at home, first of all, go see Camper English. He's the ice guy in the universe, and he will tell you everything that there's to know. Go pick up his book on Amazon. That is the end all be all ice nerd book. And what he will tell you, if you look at any random 5 seconds of his content, is that you get a little igloo cooler like this, small one, and then fill that with water, filtered water, and then put that into your freezer so it's insulated on all sides. And what's going to end up happening is it'll slowly freeze from the inside out because the 5 walls are insulated. And so they're not going to freeze as fat. They're not going to freeze first. The inside of the cube is going to freeze first, and then it's going to slowly freeze from the inside out. So that's going to reduce the amount of striations, but it's not going to cancel them out altogether. And so what you do, the next step after that is after it's frozen solid for a couple of days, depending on the size of the ice, the temperature of your freezer, etc. Then you shave off the striated part because it's going to be around the edges, and then that's the ice that you work with. And then from there, you take it out of the igloo upside down, and then you shave off the icy parts, like the softer ice and the striated, minerally ice, and then you wait for it to kind of rest for a little bit and temper it, and then you score it. And then you cut it in half, and then then you manipulate it. The ice molds are good, and I apparently, from what Chris is saying, is that that's actually going to work in Indiana. In New York, I wouldn't say that you'd be like laughed out of the bar, but it wouldn't be considered a premium experience because a lot of other places do it. Going back to the economic part of it, it's just part of the margin. They just, they charge, it's a premiumized experience, and people are going to charge you for that. So if you see that in a bar here, you're probably going to be spending at least $20 on a drink, which is reasonable. But I mean, I would go so far as to say that if you're going to charge me $20 for a drink with a fancy piece of ice, I want to see that ice frosted. I want to see the ice really fucking cold. And that's just me.
On a $20 drink, the ice should always be perfect, right? I mean, there's a definite perception difference between a $6 drink and a $20 drink.
Huh? What's your perception? Walk me through that.
Okay, so I go and I spend, I get a Tito's and soda down the street. I drink Tito's Rocks. I get a Tito's Rocks down the street. It's $6.
Is that really your drink?
Yeah.
Okay.
I drink Tito's Rocks, and around here they're $6. And if you're a regular and you tip well, normally they're a little heavy on the pours. But that is like even more basic than a vodka soda. I'm observing here. I'm not judging. That's interesting. Knowing what you know about bars, that is your drink. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's you also have to remember I'm a financial guy, right? It's one of the best values in any bar.
Okay. All right.
Right? You get a cup full of booze, a little bit of dilution. You're not paying for anything else.
Are they pouring out of like handles like 175s?
No.
Okay, because you can do that here. I don't know why more people don't do it, but you can do it. It's legal. It's
Have you ever looked at the yields on 175s though? Because what you run into is a 175, it's heavier, right? It's harder to control.
Yeah.
Especially for smaller bartenders, right? It's one thing for a guy that's 6'2" and has a bunch of muscle to pour a handle. It's another thing for, say, a woman who's a little smaller, like a 5'2" woman. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of control. And your spillage does not benefit you at the end of the day on a big handle like that.
Huh.
So you can use it. But the other thing too, and obviously liquor sales are different state by state, but one thing that's almost always true in Indiana is a lot of times our liters are cheaper per volume than the 175s because liters have always been seen as a bar bottle and they have the smallest price breaks, or the smallest quantities required to hit price breaks. But I've looked into the 1.75 thing, and it's almost always you get a lower yield because of spillage and people not being able to control the bottle well. And they're a lot more likely, to over pour.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're hearing from Angel again. Angel is staunchly supporting the ice made clear molds, saying that it has the same concept as shaping and shaving off the bottom freeze of the blocks. I'm in DC, and it's better than the standard cloudy molds, but cheaper than buying clarified ice. Okay, strong defense. That makes sense.
Cheaper, I'm good with that.
Cheaper meaning that it costs nothing because it's like all it is freezer storage,
right?
And molds, and it's a one-time cost, and it's just part of opening or closing, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Then you just have to make sure that you don't have to make too many of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for the first dress rehearsal of Bar Teams Live. It has been a pleasure to talk with you, Chris, and thank you for jumping on. If you are an expert, we would love to see you at barteams.com and reach out and DM me on the platform. It is a private and free community for bartenders, bar owners, bar managers, consultants, brands, to get the actual straight information that is not diluted and subject to algorithms like Facebook and stuff like that. So come to barteams.com. We are actively uploading our brains, everything that we've learned in the last 20 or so years of being in the bar business into this community. And we are building matchups and all this fun stuff that actually provides a meaningful value for $0. All right, Chris, anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to add?
No, not at all. Just thank you for having me on.
All righty, nerds. We're going to be back in about 2 weeks or so. We'll let you know this time. And thank you for joining us, especially you, Angel. We appreciate you chiming in. And we'll send out an email next time we go live. Thank you.